Yo, what's up? Today I'm going to be talking about The Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell by Aldous Huxley. It's two essays that are commonly paired into one book because it's about the same experience. The first one's about his actual experience of taking mescaline and a psychedelic for the first time and how it changes his perception. And the second one, Heaven and Hell, is him intellectualizing this experience and connecting it with, art and culture and philosophy, and just kind of what he had to think about it after it was all said and done. And this will probably be on my top 10 books of this year. I couldn't stop underlining. It had so many great things to say. I'll definitely read this in the future at some point, but if you don't know anything about Aldous Huxley, a little bit about him. You probably know him from Brave New World. That's what he's most famous for, which I honestly didn't really care too much about. It was fiction, but it's mainly, about him expressing these philosophical ideas in a dystopian world. But that's a whole different discussion. And a little bit about him. He was born in England in 1894 and passed in LA in 1963. He went to LA around 1937 and spent the rest of his days in America. He got his English literature degree from Oxford, and he began publishing short stories and poems before going to travel writing, satire, and screenplays, and eventually ending up in mostly philosophical writings and discussions, and really known for that, for his perennial philosophy, which talks a lot about the differences between Western and Eastern philosophy, which I find really interesting. And he was nominated for the Nobel Prize 7 times and considered one of the one of the intellectuals of his time, and was highly regarded. And he was also a pacifist. His philosophy really focused on mysticism and universalism, which this talks a lot about, and I'm guessing his perennial philosophy book also talks about, which I haven't gotten to yet, which I plan to. But yeah, that's a little bit about him. He's a really interesting guy. Definitely one to look into if you don't know who he is, and if you're interested in philosophy or psychedelics at all, this is definitely a must-read. And so, what was this about? As I mentioned before, the Doors of Perception is about him taking mescaline and him experiencing, what it's like to take a psychedelic, especially someone like him who very smart, grew up in very intellectualized society, and from Oxford, and learning everything he really needed to learn, and then all of a sudden, taking psychedelics as an older man. I actually don't really remember how old he was. I should have looked that up. This was published in 1954, so, how old was he? I don't know, but he was older. He didn't do this when he was young or anything, so, and it dramatically shifted his perception, and hence Doors of Perception, and how psychedelics are that, and how it can be used as a catalyst for many things. And yeah, so I'm kind of rambling, but it's kind of hard to explain. I kind of just want to read some passages to give you a sense of what he is talking about, and kind of what to expect if you want to read this. He talks a lot about symbolism, and how after taking psychedelics, how symbolism means so much more to him, kind of, and how he just understands it at a more deeper level, and why symbolism is used, because they're used to express things that are inexpressible. And especially with psychedelics, it's something that you can't like verbalize. It's an experience, and the only way to experience it is to experience it, and you can't really describe it. But yeah, here's a passage from page 18 talking about different symbols. What rose and iris and carnation so intensely signified was nothing more and nothing less than what they were: a transience that was yet eternal life, a perpetual perishing that was at the same time pure being, a bundle of minute, unique particulars in which, by some unspeakable and yet self-evident paradox, was to be seen the divine source of all existence. And another, and he brings in a lot of, which I like a lot, he references a lot of other artists and what it means to be an artist, and how some of these what are called the mystics, like William Blake and Wordsworth and some others, that like some people just like don't make sense until you've had like these type of experiences. Then all of a sudden they click and you're just like, oh, I finally know what they're talking about. Like Wordsworth's daffodils, they brought all manner of wealth, the gift beyond price of a new direct insight into the nature of all things. And then lastly, for doors of perception, what the rest of us see only under the influence of mescaline, the artist is congenially equipped to see all the time. His perception is not limited to what is biologically or socially useful. A little of the knowledge belonging to mind at large in capital meaning, like universal consciousness, oozes past the reducing valve of brain and ego into his consciousness. It is a knowledge of the intrinsic significance of every existent. For the artist, as for the mescaline taker, draperies are living hieroglyphs that stand in some peculiarly expressive way for the unfathomable mystery of pure being. Sorry, I kind of butchered that one, but that's on page 33, which I absolutely love that quote. I know I said lastly, but this is the last one actually. The fear as I analyze it in retrospect was of being overwhelmed, of disintegrating under a pressure of reality greater than a mind accustomed to living most of the time in a cozy world of symbols could possibly bear. The literature of religious experience abounds in references to the pains and terrors overwhelming those who have come too suddenly face to face with some manifestation of the mysterium tremendum. In theological language, this fear is due to the incompatibility between man's egotism and the divine purity, between man's self-aggravating separateness and the infinity of God. And when he uses God in these passages, I don't think he's talking about the Christian God, but he says God as something that's easy for everybody to understand, because there's in most religions today, I mean, there's not too many multiple God religion, what's the word, polytheism today, but he's just talking about, he's using the word God because it's easily understandable, and this was written in the 1950s, so referring to the Christian sense is just kind of easier for people to understand, I think. But he's speaking about God as like the thing that is all things. But yeah, so I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was amazing. Definitely 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely gonna be what's the word? Returning to it eventually. But yeah, and then the Heaven and Hell, I didn't really like as much as Doors of Perception. I mean, they were both great, but yeah, Heaven and Hell has like more smaller passages, and he really goes deep into like all these different eras and art and culture and what he thinks all this means essentially, and different ways to experience psychedelics and what it means to be an artist. And there's even all the appendix, because these two essays are only 140 pages, and then there's the appendices, which I thought was just as good as the others, and he goes into more detail about artists and art and everything, which I've always found really interesting. I like bringing in all aspects, just talking about everything essentially. I don't know, but sorry, I've been really kind of rambling on and everything, but if you're still with me, thanks for checking it out. Definitely check this book out if you're interested in philosophy or psychedelics at all, and yeah, thanks.